This International Women's Day, we bring to you a special discussion. We will be discussing leadership, opportunities, fairness in artificial intelligence, and creating an infrastructure to help women in STEM. The speakers for this session are Mandeep Maitra, Leadership Transformation and Design Coach, Sukla Chandra, Senior Managing Director, GE Licensing and Technology Ventures India, Anusha Rammohan, Senior Technology Leader at Myelin Foundry, and the session is being moderated by Anitha Kaveri, Manager, Sectors and Special Projects, IIT India. Our speakers today have got an impressive bio, and I'm going to give you a snapshot of the same. Mandeep Maitra has nearly 3 decades of work experience across Paris, London, Singapore, and Mumbai. She has successfully mentored and coached high-performing teams and senior business leaders across industries and countries. During her stint in Paris, she was a part of the Academy of Design Thinking and Entrepreneurship Consultancy, London. She was involved in facilitating design thinking workshops, mentoring startups, and coaching women entrepreneurs. In India, her last assignment was as the country head human resources and corporate services for HDFC Bank. She is considered the architect of the HR function in HDFC Bank and managed mega mergers to build scale and reach for the bank. She is on the board of the HR fund that supports technology startups as well. Our next speaker, Sukla Chandra, is responsible for the technology transfer and licensing collaborations for GE Technologies globally. Shukla, in her last role, was responsible for developing and executing multi-generation product and commercialization strategies for GE's rural electrification platform. In her previous role, Shukla was the General Manager, GE Global Research, Bangalore, where she was responsible for all the operational aspects of a research group of more than 300 scientists. Shukla has several patents and is registered with the US Patent and Trademark Office. She also co-led the GE Women's Network initiatives for India for past 5 years. Our next speaker, Anusha Rammohan, has over 13 years industry experience with 9 years in R&D and 4 years in leadership roles, delivering customer and business outcomes across a variety of industries, including media and entertainment, healthcare, oil and gas, aviation, and energy, focusing on data analytics, machine learning, and AI-based solutions. In her current role as the Senior Technology Leader at Myelin Foundry, she leads a team of technologists creating AI products and solutions for challenging problems in the media and entertainment and health and wellness space. Anusha has several patents and publications to her credit and was recognized as one of the top 10 innovators under 35 in India by Mint MIT Review in 2017. Our moderator for today, Anitha Kaveri, leads the strategic sector initiatives for the IIT in India and steers our sector focus for the future technologies, future of mobility and transport, as well as future of work. Anitha joined the IIT in 2012 as part of the India Marketing and Communications team and led the function for 3 years from 2015 to 2018. Anitha is pursuing a PhD in management and her thesis straddles areas of organizational behavior, organizational psychology, and vocational behavior. Over to you, Anitha.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this discussion that we are organizing for the International Women's Day. I have with me 3 stellar leaders, each one in their own right having done technology transformations for their organizations with me, and we are going to ask some tough questions. We hope you enjoy the session. So we'll begin with a question to Mandeep. Mandeep, in all your experience of leading in BFSI sector, which is one of the first sectors that adopts technology in very large scale. So you must have, in your experience, understood some of the nuances of how women leadership needs to be pushed in organizations. Why do you think there's still a challenge of getting women to corner offices, especially in technology firms? And what is your take on that?
So, Anita, my answer to this question is going to be that there is a problem about women coming to the C-suite level across all sectors. When I look at banking and financial services, where I spent most of the time, in fact, that sector has a lot of women entering, like the IT sector. About 50% women enter the banking and financial sector. It is one of the sectors like consulting and IT, where a large number of women workforce join. I think it's the safest sector when you think it's very clean environments, safe, all the kind of hygiene factors which you don't find in manufacturing, energy, oil, construction, that is not there with them. So this is something where I find a lot of aspiring women who get into this. It pays very well. In fact, careers which are in STEM anyway pay two-thirds more than any other sector. So I can see a lot of women like to come here. In India, specifically, where a lot more women are coming out of engineering colleges, and World Economic Forum actually says that you have about 48% India heads the number of women who get into science. The only problem is, why don't they stay there? And I was just talking to a few friends the other day about manufacturing and about getting into that, why a lot of the other sectors do not attract. And I found that a lot of them don't have basic hygiene thing, don't have security. People don't like to go there. Even in IT sectors, some of the studies in India itself say that in the middle level, women don't like to be in hardcore programming or coding roles. They try to prefer to go into business development, product development, or marketing and things like that. The IT friends end up saying that, do we have careers which would hold these women, and do they have enough role models in the corner offices to make them be there? And are our women being good mentors to the girls who are coming in now and telling them all the trials and the tribulations that they might have gone through, or the challenges, and be able to share their triumphs and go across it? I was sharing this HBR study with you, I think, the other day, and telling you that why we give different kind of feedback to women. Actually, when it comes to women, we end up telling them they're not assertive enough, they don't collaborate much. We do not tell them how to manage some of the networks. If the people at some levels across the organizations, the colleagues, if there is little politics in the organization, we tell women to collaborate. We don't tell them that actually they could learn from some of these nexus and try to work with them, which is what we expect the men to do. So the feedback that we are giving to both men and women is different. The support that we are giving to men and women can sometimes be separate. It's not there all the time. I was lucky I didn't go through any such discrimination. The organizations I work for, I think I really enjoyed the fact that the pay gap, there were no gender pay issues and things like that. But considering that I'm working as a consultant, I see that there are a lot of industries that still have that. And the fact that the last 10 years, when I have worked in Singapore and lived in France and worked in London, I have seen that some of these issues still exist in some of these sectors. So my issue would be only to, how can we help women come to the senior levels? How can there be more advocacy for women? How can we create sponsored networks which helps them come up? How can we mentor them? That and this should be inclusive of the men who are there in the organization when we want to make women take up senior roles. We do create a lot of flexible arrangements. We do create norms these days that women have the options which are flexible and they can take it. But women feel that they're stigmatized because they take those options. And the fact that they do not, stand up for promotions or things like that is because she went on a maternity leave, or the fact that she's, doing childcare or working some days from home. There will be issues like that. But so far, a lot of women have said that when they go out or come back after each of the sabbaticals they take, they do find that they are gone on a slower track. So that thing happens, and we need to really create a support system if we really need to see some gender parity coming into our workplaces.
Right. Thanks, Mandeep, for those perspectives, and I think they're very valid. The differential feedback that people get in organizations is a very, very clear point. Sukla, you have led women in core engineering. You've led women innovation teams. What is your take on this? The gap that people speak about in STEM, especially in leadership positions. So you have handled women who have a passion for STEM, who want to be in STEM. What is your take on the same question?
So yes, so I have led. So I've been in with G for almost 20 years, and I'm very passionate about science and technology. Has I have been very passionate since I was a very small child. So looking at that, when I look at my teams I have led and the women, one thing is very clear. First of all, is that when we look at women and their capability, that's really not the problem, because as you heard from Mandeep, India is actually at the top. 43% women actually get into STEM. Now what happens to them, because we have only 14% in the workforce? So what happens to the other 30 odd percent of women? So what I have observed over the years and my personal experience is that when women start their career in STEM, they really are passionate, they are excited, and then around mid career is when I have seen a lot of women struggle with the responsibilities they have, whether it comes from family, whether it comes from having kids. So I have seen a lot of women at that point in time start thinking that, should I take a break? And I feel that in today's world I really want to encourage the organizations to think very differently, and I want the organization to be very very flexible in telling women that at mid career, if you think that there are 6 months or 12 months where you want to take a break, you want to come back, that's totally okay. And so the reason I feel, the topmost reason why we don't see that 43 translating into a very healthy number getting into corporate and then getting into the corner office is that there is a leaky bucket within this whole system, and we are losing a very very talented set of women in that. So there are few things that I feel that it's very important. One, as women, we also have to want it. So when I think that I want to lead a very large engineering group, I want to lead a very large R&D organization, that aspiration, that ambition, that focus, that needs to be there in me as well. One. Second is, there has to be a ecosystem and a support system from the organization side, which has to be there. And when I'm saying that, it cannot be just women that are into it. Men play a huge role into that, because I heard a word Mandeep used called stigmatized, right? So that happens when your peer level actually start talking about, oh, again you're going on a sabbatical. Those kind of comments make you feel that should I do it or shouldn't I do it? But I'm very encouraged to see that more and more I see men are also taking equal responsibility at home. I would like to see that this was a problem of our generation. When I look at younger generation, I see that challenges are very different, in the sense like we don't talk much about, when I talk to them, the 30 plus or maybe below 30 STEM professionals, all they want is more opportunity, more challenge, and how to grow and how to make an impact and different in the world through technology. And rarely I have heard them talking about, should I be doing this, can I do this, should I take more responsibility because I have so much responsibility at home. I think we are moving away from that. I'm not saying we have reached a stage where it's all nice and ideal, but I think we are getting there, and I would like to be very hopeful. And I think my when I look at the technology leadership roles in India or globally, there are so many women who are starting to be there. May not be the corner office all the time, but to reach the corner office you need to have a healthy pipeline, and I see that healthy pipeline becoming stronger as we speak. But there are a lot more the organization need to do to make sure that we do not lose these women in between. So one is the women themselves need to be motivated enough to be there, and the second is the organization really need to support them to make sure that they stay focused and they don't lose these talents in between. So
in my experience, I've seen organizations that acknowledge that there is diversity not just needed in leadership. And by diversity, I mean different styles of leadership. And it's a whole spectrum. You know, you can have empathetic leaders, you can have inspiring leaders, you can have leaders who want to be objective, just and fair. There's a whole bunch of qualities that makes a leader, and it's not just confidence, or it's not just assertiveness. And I've seen that where organizations acknowledge that and encourage diversity in leaders and in leadership levels, that it also sends a message to men and women that you can have, you know, different types of qualities and still have a path to get to a leadership role. For me, I remember having a lot of trepidation, thinking about, do I have what it takes? And it was helpful hearing those messages in leadership trainings, in coaching and mentoring, that, you know, the unique qualities that I bring to a leadership role is also valued. And I think that goes a long way to what Sukla was talking about, getting motivation, right? For women need to be motivated to seek and aspire to those roles. I think this is one big part of that.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a great perspective, Anusha, and I like the way you define diversity in perspectives of leadership. Uh, Sheryl Sandberg was once talking about women in general, how they behave in boardrooms, and if there's a table in the center, people sit in the layer of tables behind it, not at the table. So she keeps saying that women need to sit at the table, but I think we also need messaging that is commensurate with that, that says that yes, you can sit at the table, and it doesn't matter. So that's great. Then with that, I'll slowly make a segue into our next question, which is directed first at Anusha. This is squarely in her, it's her pet area. It is AI, and there is fairness in AI, which is taking center stage of many discussions currently. The debate is that most AI models or most AI algorithms that are predominantly in the market are very gendered at this standpoint, and women representation is very less in those models. There are also discussions that say that there is a bias that's inherently built into AI systems that is currently out there. So, Anusha, what's your take on that, and how do you think we can break it? India is still at a very starting stage of this. So, how do we ensure that we don't feed into this bias and we are actually able to break away from it?
Yeah, so I've been following this debate very closely, and a lot of the examples that are coming out where there's been instances of bias in AI outputs. Some of them, on one end of the spectrum are probably mildly annoying, and then you have the other end of the spectrum where you could potentially have an AI do a triage in healthcare, and in examples like that, it's no longer just annoying and something that you have to put up with, right? That has to do with the lives of women. So I don't think it's a coincidence or a correlation that in the entire AI ecosystem, women are very underrepresented. And I mean end-to-end cycle, right? Not just the ones who are creating the data sets or training them or building the models, but all the way from problem definition, understanding, solutioning, and once the AI model is built, all the way down to productizing it and selling it. In this entire spectrum of activities, I think we absolutely need more women. This to me is a no-brainer. We absolutely need more women representation in this end-to-end life cycle. The other somewhat more subtle aspect, and I think you alluded to it when you say this bias baked into the AI model. I think where we've been led a little bit astray even as AI technologists is more often than not, we try to model AI systems on human intelligence, which is a good way to start. But then you start thinking about how did human intelligence evolve? And it evolved under, prehistoric times where the brain needed to process information and data really quickly and reach conclusions. Otherwise, you probably get eaten by a bear, right? So those are the circumstances under which the human intelligence evolved. So a cognitive module, for example, in the brain that is able to look at an animal that you haven't seen before and say, well, that's big and it has teeth, so it's probably a predator, is a great cognitive module. Now, unfortunately, it's the same module that is now, if in an interviewer who looks at a candidate and says, the candidate's gender is such and such, and hence they are only good for these things. So unfortunately, it's stemming from the same cognitive modules that helped us a long time back, but now it's leading us astray, and that's one of the fallibilities of human intelligence. Now you take this module, right? The module that is able to quickly categorize things and put them in boxes. And then you start modeling AI systems on top of these. And unfortunately, then you end up with the same human fallibilities baked into these models. So I think there needs to be two things that have to change. One, we have to get more women in not just AI technology, but the whole AI ecosystem. We also need to start thinking about alternate paradigms for building these AI models. Are there other ways that information can be processed? Can we reduce the number of assumptions that we implicitly make when building these models? And can we, tear these models away from the human fallibilities, which the trap of which they're falling into today? So to me, those are two big things that need to be done. The good news is that unlike human bias, AI bias can be acknowledged and can be corrected. It's far more difficult to correct biases among human beings.
Yeah. Oh, well said, Anusha. Shukla, is there anything else you want to add to this discussion?
Yeah, I think Anusha's last point gives a nice segue to what I wanted to actually talk about, which is unconscious bias. Sometimes bias comes when you know that I'm biased because of a certain experience in your lifetime you have had, certain exposure you have had, where you come from. But there is something called completely unconscious bias, and that is something which kind of governs the way you think, and that is not in your control. The way you think, the way you act. So to be able to recognize that is very, very difficult, and that is something very important for us now as organizations to make sure that we talk about unconscious bias. And you talk about AI, and I am also following this debate which is going on fairness in AI, and I do realize that particular segment is also underrepresented in gender. But if you look at any innovation, any product development, any engineering problem that needs to be solved today, if you have a set of people who think very similar way, then the solution which is going to come out, it's not going to be a holistic solution. So gone are the days when, I'm from GE, so I'll give you a GE example. So we design and manufacture jet engines, a very complex machinery with the kind of software, algorithm, material, mechanical, you name it, every bit of science and engineering goes behind it. And so if you just have a set of engineers who are mechanical engineers think about it, you're not going to have a product that's going to be, the world class. Whereas you need, a set of people who think about material to mechanical problem to electrical to software to design, how it should look, behave, interact with people who are going to be using it. All of that has to come together. So diversity of thoughts and inclusion of people who have a different perspective is absolutely important for successful innovation of technology and product in today's market, whether it's AI, whether it's a physical product, whether it's a software, whether it's a new material, it doesn't matter. So to me, that is, and I think organizations have absolutely recognized that. And every innovation that goes in the market as a product or a technology definitely has a team behind it. So which is, I think we are getting there. We are miles to go before we reach that.
Yeah. Mandeep, is there anything you want to add to this?
I just wanted to say from the aspect, I think Anusha and Sukla have nicely covered all the things related to AI. I wanted to cover it from the aspect of the labor markets. When I am looking at with all the consultants, HR people, this fact that women are very underrepresented, to say the least, in the AI bit into where they are. There is a kind of a fear that if all these tools that are being built right now, it's not about just human fallibility, it's about the fact that if women are not so underrepresented at this point in time, what kind of tools are going to come, and is tomorrow the hiring and the promoting and all of women going to get impacted? As it is, the distribution of jobs, the second bit which is taking to is automation. And I end up thinking about the fact that there are more than 80-90% women who are in jobs related to whether it is primary middle school teachers, whether it is registered nurses, whether it is occupational therapists or any other things like that, or paralegals, or most of the clerical jobs. If that is the percentage of people which is 80 to 90% there, and these are the tasks are getting automated, a whole bit also worries the fact that how is it going to work for this sector now going forward?
Picking it up from where Mandeep left, Shukla, do you agree with that? That the professions that were generally favored by women, or the professions where currently you see a lot of women comfortable in, are those more at the risk of automation? Do they have to worry more? Do they have to upskill faster in those roles? What's your take on that?
So when I have probably, in different sector, I have a different viewpoint here probably on certain sectors, because when I look at traditionally where women are very strongly represented in workforce, which is legal, which is HR, which is communications, and when I look at the creative world, there are so many women out there. Yes, manufacturing sector, probably women are underrepresented. We have already talked about AI. We have talked about core engineering roles where women are underrepresented. So when I look at all these sectors where women are well represented, I do not see that getting automated very quickly. I'm not saying that it cannot be automated anytime soon, but I don't see that happening very, very rapidly, because when I look at HR, a very good HR leader, say, empathetic, communication skills, ability to understand a tough situation, collaborating with people, these are some things probably you will not be able to
Maybe.
do it with a machine so easily. I'm not saying it is impossible. I'm just saying it's going to be more difficult. Whereas if you look at manufacturing sector, where a large number of probably, especially in India, when I look at the percent of women, even in that sector, probably underrepresented, and that automation is happening very fast as we speak. And the creative world, I think AI scares me sometimes, because I sometimes think that it should not happen that we lose our creativity, and that's one sector I see that women are flourishing. They are fantastic, and I don't see that because of the automation that's going to suffer, because sometimes I feel that is one quality that AI probably will not be able to do something about. So yeah, so it very much depends on the sector we are talking about. And I do agree that there are certain sectors, as Mandeep said, paralegal, secretary or office administration, or IT support at the basic level. Those are the jobs probably are going to be automated very soon, and it's coming very rapidly. But I think those are the sectors which are represented by men also sometimes. So I'm not overly worried about just women. I'm worried about the entire workforce and the risk of losing jobs, which is something everybody is worried about.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, as someone who's probably doing a lot of the automation here, so the way I see automation affecting jobs, it's the unfortunate reality is that jobs that are repetitive, whether that's physically repetitive or mentally repetitive, the ones that don't take a lot of skill or training to do, those are the jobs that are at most risk for automation. If you look at the physically repetitive jobs, they are usually male dominated. They are the industries, for example, construction or driving. You could have driverless cars fairly soon. And then there are mentally repetitive jobs, which sometimes have more women, sometimes have more men. So all of them are at risk for automation. I think it's Mandeep mentioned upskilling. So the automation has happened in different phases in the past as well. What has happened is jobs have disappeared and newer jobs have appeared. I think that the same is going to happen with AI and with robotics and a whole bunch of other initiatives that are replacing these manual roles, right? So upskilling is a necessary thing that has to be done. We will find more opportunities opening up they will create newer sectors. They will create something in the middle, which is augmented, where people talk about augmented intelligence, which is you understand what an AI model is telling you, but you still the human being who's responsible for taking the decision. So there's a whole bunch of opportunities that are going to come up in those areas, and there I see a lot of opportunity for women specifically, with a little bit of training, with a little bit of upskilling. I think these would be what will replace the jobs that will be lost.
Yeah, true, Anusha, and I think we will come to that bit about skilling very soon. Um the last but one question I had for all of you is specifically around the pandemic and its impact on how we've been working. Some of the greatest discussions that are currently, are on. The first one is that everybody feels there is a pressure to look visible. You have to be on calls. You have to pretend to be busy if you're not busy. You just have to continuously be present. On the other hand, it's putting a lot of pressure in addition to the work intensification that has happened. Either you're putting up a front that you're there, you're working continuously to signal to your employer that there's a lot of work, and that's characterized by the insecurity that's there in the market. What is your take on how this has affected both genders? That's the first one. The second one, is there a positive note also because of the pandemic? Is there a better balance that women are able to strike uh, when it comes to responsibilities? So, what's your take on both these? What do you say scenarios?
So I think I can talk a little bit about my personal experience just going through the phases of lockdown, and I have a 3-year-old son, so it's not been easy. But I think the lesson that I have personally learned, and I think organizations everywhere are learning, is that the distinction between the personal and the professional is not as stark as we would have liked it to be, and it's fast becoming so blended that my son appears in some of my meetings, and then when I'm with him I get calls and I have to attend. So I think the black and white distinction between work and life, or personal and professional, I think that no longer exists. So organizations, individuals as well as organizations, have been forced to acknowledge that and find a way around it, which I think is a good thing. And I'm hoping that the same acknowledgement will continue even after hopefully life returns to some kind of new normal. I'm hoping that that same realization that we have to account for the fact that everybody everywhere deals with a lot of personal circumstances, and it's very, very hard to say, I don't care what happens at home, you have to do all of these things, right? So I'm hoping that it encourages now a more open conversation on work life balance, on balancing, like you said, the need to be present all the time versus personal constraints and circumstances that might exist. And I'm hoping that organizations will evolve to take all of that into account when we plan activities, when we plan projects and timelines and all of that.
Yeah, thanks, Anusha. Moving on to Shukla. Shukla, what's your take on this? Uh,
So I think it's been a challenge and a huge learning the last 1 year. When all this happened, we never could think that we could actually work the way we have all done for the last 12 months. And it looks like it's going to continue for some more time before we get back to new normal. So I think a couple of things here. One is, I agree with Anusha, the this is personal, this is professional life. There is a huge gray now because we are seamlessly getting from one into another and getting it back. So I do hope that continues. I have seen leaders and employees all become much more empathetic towards, okay, this is something you have to attend, and we have to really take care of a family situation. People are getting a lot more tolerant to that. Earlier we used to have calls and video calls and all of that, and people will be like, want to be perfect in that, and you don't want your family to be hovering around because you need to look very professional. I think that is gone. I see kids coming into calls, they're crying at the background, and people are comfortable with, and I love that, and that's how it should be. Because but at the same token, I think it's very stressful for a lot of people, because some of us may be very fortunate to have a set of place in our home where we can use for office. But I know of certain people who do not have that, especially within India. And I really feel for them, a good internet, a good space to use as an office. So there are pros and cons of looking at everything. And ultimately, end of the day, lot of organizations are thinking about permanently doing something about working from home. Some portion of their population will be working from home. There'll be hot desking. So there are many concepts we are discussing. But end of the day, I love people. I love interacting with people. And I think, um, although I like working from home, and I think we have come together, all of us as families, much more, but I feel that face to face interaction is also very important to create that bond, to create like we are part of one team, that you cannot ignore that. So I think, end of it, there has to be a balance. We have tilted completely on the other side. So I'm hoping that with this experience, when we go back, we will be able to balance both the sides completely.
Thanks, Shukla. Mandeep, you've been consulting with a lot of firms. You've been talking to a lot of startups in these, in the times of the pandemic. What has been your experience on both these fronts? One is, the need to be present, the need to be visible, and second, what are some of the good aspects of this?
Well, one, I must tell Anusha and Sukla that I envy you. You have luckily working in organizations where such things, and the employers are also encouraging enough, because during the COVID, there were a lot of people who were in the services sector, specifically banking, where I spent maximum time in my career, who had to go back to work because they had to take turns. How many people went to those branches and opened the branches? And I know a handful of all my RMs who were COVID positive had to go through it because they were catering to the market there, some of them. And a lot of these organizations, as you both have already mentioned, were totally caught by surprise. These are not people who were given laptops. They didn't obviously have Wi-Fi's. They lived very far, and everything was taken by surprise. So that when organizations have to be forced to say who are my critical people and not so critical, think about what happens to the people who are on the benches, who are just saying that, listen, I'm ready to come to work because my job may be on the line. So these, while in the first few months, organizations got ready with it in a lot of way, large population was accessing it, even if it was on a mobile, and really not on that. They had to get processes and IT things clarified, so that security system, you have client informations, you have so many things which are there, and all organizations weren't prepared for running this on a remote basis. Having said that, fast forward, yes, so the future came very quickly, everything happened very quickly, which is all positive. But going forward, now they are finally deciding that, okay, one was the real estate part of it. But the second thing that you're thinking is a lot of corporates have gone into the hybrid functioning. And till February, in fact, research shows that till last month, only one third of the organizations globally had actually revisited their performance review systems and said that, listen, we are going to be outcomes and result oriented, not the number of hours put, where did you put it, how did you put it, and what did you do? Because this is where somewhere the gender biases which happens, that gets really amplified. Because being at home for the first time, it was very nice. The good part was that men also realized that how do you take care of home and also help your spouse and manage your children and be able to do the work. That was something which was very humbling for everyone on one platform. But the second part was that a lot of the women said that we feel even now that the number of hours we are putting, because mostly women feel we're doing a double shift. We finish the work and then we come back and we work at home. You have to be very fortunate. Like India, most people around the world don't have, people to domestic helpers to help them. So they find that as a big challenge, or they don't have parents living with them who can look after the children and things like that. So I feel it is very nice to see children going, but I've also been told by some of the women and saying that my boss perceives I'm less committed because I'm also keeping an eye and I'm homeschooling my child. So there are people who are going through challenges because of this, because their bosses haven't taken that leap of faith and the trust to say that I have given you the work and you will get it done. How you get it done is up to you. And I trust you because the performance management systems haven't yet changed to that extent for these people. And they still feel that the hours that they are seen is what matters. So they're exhausted. The burnout is happening. Everyone, all organizations are now talking about employee mental health, well-being. That has become the big this thing to talk about. So we are facing I find that some organizations are very, and specifically some of the technology organizations, I think, which have always showed the way to a lot of other industries as to how this needs to be done and how can it be done properly. But I think the narrative has to change for the HR people. It has to move away from the number of hours spent to the outcomes and the results which come up. Having said that, because this whole thing is for International Women's Day, I think we were, because of various forums that I work with, the fact that the percentage of women who are actually in the organized sector and the people that we are talking about is still a very small percentage of total India. When we look at that, how are we in the global ranking in gender parity or something, we just move a needle, just moves little bit. I mean, 0.1%, 0.3% every year, and those things exist. And that whole market which looks at the gender pay gaps, which looks at that there's unpaid work which women do, which is for child care, parental care, that numbers and that debate goes on and on. So I think it has been very humbling. I was talking to a friend after coming back last year after a decade. We decided to start an edutech, me and my husband, and it's been humbling to go to C category towns, D category towns, and you feel at times that while we were all growing and doing things, we have left a part of the country behind, and we need to go back and walk with them because they're still fighting some of the usual battles. And the women there definitely have a very, very tough challenges ahead of them, kind of challenges that we have totally forgotten. Some of us come from good families, and our fathers were encouraging enough to educate us. We have had great bosses, great mentors, and we have come this far. But when you start working with that other India that we have, you realize that there's a long way to go. I just wanted to say that because every time that I see that it's still few hundreds of years before that we eliminate gender discrimination, and I mean we come in parity across the world, and definitely not going to happen in my daughter's lifetime as well. That is very, very humbling. So I think pandemic has really brought some things. It's actually amplified some of the biases which exist, but at the same time it's actually got men to also see how much work goes in for a woman at home as well, and that has been very nice. I think it was required. I'm not talking about our generation of women who are working where husbands do give a hand in the kitchen, the Gen Z, wonderful bunch of youngsters. Work life balance is important, working at home, giving a hand. That's not the generation I'm talking about. I'm talking about still that part of the country where these things have yet to catch up, and people have to see that we need to really support women and help them to really achieve what they are meant for achieving in this world.
Thanks, Mandeep. That was a reality check. Sometimes, because this discussion was focused on STEM leadership, but all of this is indeed important, and they are deeply rooted in how we grow as a country. So, thank you for bringing that perspective, Shukla. I this is the last question I have, and this is essentially what is that one thing that you might want to say to young girls walking in the path of STEM, that want to become leaders in STEM. So let's assume the first criteria that you said, they should want it, and then all the system and everybody is there to help. So what's that one thing you might want to tell those girls who are walking into STEM?
So I would first of all like to tell them two things. I have many things, but out of that things, one is never let anybody tell you that you are any less. We are all equals, and you can achieve whatever you aspire for. And I truly, truly believe in that. And second is don't leave your dream and passion anywhere. So follow your dreams, follow your passion. It may sound very challenging at some point in time in some corner of your life, but don't drop that dream and that passion. So and follow that. And every person that is different. So it's very individual. So those will be the two things I want to
That's very inspiring, Shukla, and it's been a thread you've been keeping on reiterating throughout the session, and it's very good to articulate it at the end as well. Anusha, how about you? You're a millennials leader in a very up and coming field, probably the most futuristic field. What is your nugget? What would you like to say?
I think Shukla stole all the good ones, but I'll try. So I would say, you people will always try to put you in a box, and I speak from personal experience. So don't let anyone put you in a box. Don't let anyone peg you and tell you that you have to be this or that, or you have to, fit in here or there, and you have to be able to find your own way. And the other thing I would say is it's hard, and you have to, whatever, following one's dreams, no matter what those dreams are, and specifically for women, it's hard. And so you have to walk into this with your eyes wide open.
Yeah, thanks, Anusha. I think that's very open, and yeah, it's very well said. Mandeep, last words before we close the session. What would be your?
I think that I totally agree with the wonderful what Shukla and Anusha said. I have a 23-year-old who's decided not to follow banking, Anusha, and she's into STEM as well, and ready to, after finishing masters, getting into that. She was 12 when she decided to get into STEM, and I think she was listening to a lecture which talked about that why STEM is important and how countries around the world, how the economy, how the world, how innovation in the future, everything is finally defined by people in STEM. And she was so touched by that suddenly the thing happened at age 12 that, listen, I need to get into one of the STEM things. So hats off to the ladies here who have, and it's been very, very hard work, and I see that. But kudos to you women who are paving the way for these younger girls to get into it. It is really very hard, but at the same time, I think if parents start pushing that whole thing about that girls can't do maths, they can't do science, which was the older norms, I'm so glad that at least in our country and across the world, the norms are changing. Parents like us are encouraging girls to take it up, and we are making them stronger, and we are helping the boys respect the fact that girls are becoming stronger. So that's all we can do.
Thanks, Mandeep. So I think the greatest takeaway that I've got from today's session is that leadership is getting better. There is a strong pipeline of leaders, of the new crop of leaders out there. It's what it is, and it is going to be hard. And so is if anything that you want to get and you really aspire for is always hard, and that applies to leadership as well. So that's what I get. I think with all of your perspectives, I think the future of India's STEM is in great hands. So thank you so much for making time for us, and I hope the audience also enjoys the discussion as much as we did. Thank you, ladies, for this wonderful panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.